Hey guys, so this is gonna be my first story time in my new apartment. And this is something that happened to me about 6 months ago. And people who follow my Patreon, they already know this story. And I actually said on my Patreon that I was never going to make a video about this on my regular channel just because at the time it was an extremely traumatizing event for me. And sometimes I just feel like letting it out, and Patreon's a really great place to do that because I'm like really close with a lot of the people on there. So this happened about 6 months ago. I was living in New York City and I was single. I was newly single and I was just going a little bit crazy on Tinder, as like all recently single people do. I am no longer on Tinder. I finally realized that like Tinder is probably, and yes, you guys are gonna be like, Stephanie, I told you so. Tinder is literally the worst fucking place to meet people. But actually this has nothing to do with Tinder because I specifically remember swiping left on this guy, but he had super liked me. And I thought about it, I really did, but I was looking at his pictures and he just seemed a little bit full of himself. Like, guys, word of advice, like shirtless selfies at the gym, most girls are not into that. I mean, if you are, ladies, please let me know that you exist. Maybe this is like hookup people lingo, like if you post a picture of yourself with your shirt off, you're like letting girls know that you're DTF, and all the other girls that are also DTF are like, yes, but I'm not DTF. I can't F. I swiped left on this guy and I thought that was just gonna be the end of it. But apparently it wasn't. A few days later, I received an Instagram DM from none other than shirtless selfie guy. And I should have just realized he was a creep, but I don't know, maybe I was lonely? I'm not really quite sure, but I ended up responding to him, and his message was something along the lines of, I saw you on Tinder, I couldn't pass up the opportunity to try and talk to you, and he like wrote a little paragraph about who he was, and I was like, wow, that's really sweet. Like, you know, maybe I was a little bit too judgmental of the fact that this guy had a shirtless selfie. I mean, come on, like, have you seen my selfies on my Instagram? They're probably, you know, not much better. So I decided to stop being judgmental, and I try my best to not be that way. I try to look past appearances, and that is one of the main things I am trying to work on as a person. So I decided to exchange numbers with this guy, and we texted, we even phone called. What is that? Is that even the proper way to say call somebody? I don't know, because I never call people. I hate calling people, but he called me like 5 times, so I was like, all right, I might as well just pick. Maybe that was also a red flag that he called me so many times. Now looking back, I'd realize maybe I'm a dumbass. So we talked on the phone, and even one of my friends at the time, she was like, you know, always make sure you talk on the phone with the guy before you go on a date with him because you can really read people's energies on the phone. And I felt like his energy was really good. He was very talkative and charismatic. He did seem a little bit full of himself, and yes, he was like a Wall Street type guy. So I knew going into this that yes, he had a lot of money. He was very, I don't want to say conceited, but very confident, and he was just like slightly older. I think he was like in his late 30s, or okay, that's a lot older. Okay, sorry. Living as a single girl in New York City, you were taught a few things: don't eat the hot dogs and don't date Wall Street guys. And in my year of living in New York City, I'm proud to say I have never had a hot dog from a hot dog cart. So, but I did go on a date with this Wall Street guy, and it was one of the biggest regrets of this year. That date will forever haunt my dreams, I mean nightmares actually. And okay, so I'm gonna get onto a more serious note. So this guy invites me on a date and I finally say yes, and he said he wants to take me to this really nice steakhouse. And immediately I feel like a little bit uncomfortable about that because, I don't know, it's the first date, and if he's gonna take me to a steakhouse, then like what are his expectations? Sorry dude, I can't be bought with filet mignon. It's just not gonna happen. I don't know, maybe I was hungry that week and I just said okay. And I was a little bit hopeful. I thought, wow, well maybe this guy is really, really nice. Maybe this is just a huge life lesson, like never judge a book by its cover because this guy can turn out to be amazing. So I get dressed up, I look very, very classy, but not like it should matter, you know? Like what I wore to this date should not have any impact on the way that I am treated. And a lot of people think differently. I don't. I think, you know, you dress however you want. If you could dress like a total skank, and at the end of the night, if you say no, no means no. So I meet him out front, and instantly it kind of hits me. He doesn't really look like his pictures. Like, he does not look as good as his pictures. but that really didn't bother me that much. It's just something that I noticed in the back of my head, and I honestly don't care too much about appearances. Like, as long as you look vaguely somewhat like your profile pictures, as long as you're like a really nice and funny person, I can look past that. You know, don't look like you're in a totally different age group. Other than that, we're cool. So he goes up to me and I'm expecting a hug or like a handshake, but he actually goes in to try and kiss me, and I don't know why, because I gave him no signals at all that I was down for that. So I back away and I'm like, hold your horses. I literally met you seconds ago. So he apologized. He's like, sorry, I'm a kisser. I'm like a very touchy person. Yes, he was. I laughed it off. I was like, okay, really awkward first encounter. It can only go up from here. Well, I was wrong. So we walk into the steakhouse and the waiter comes over to us and he knows the guy, so that's also weird. Like, oh wow, he comes here often. And then the waiter tells us to follow him, and I'm walking behind the waiter, and the waiter is not taking us to the regular section of the restaurant where everybody's eating. He is actually taking us upstairs, and I'm like, what the hell is upstairs? Like, well, am I being kidnapped? I should have turned around and like went home at that point, but I followed this waiter and this random dude up the stairs to the upstairs portion of the restaurant, which was also just a part of the restaurant, but there was nobody there. It looked like it was closed down. There were chairs on some of the tables. So the waiter seats us in this big round booth in the back of the upstairs of this restaurant. There's nobody there, and I immediately start feeling really, really uncomfortable. But I'm trying to talk myself out of feeling uncomfortable. Like, I'm trying to tell myself, okay, you talk to this guy for like weeks before even going out with him. He seems really nice. Like, maybe he just wants privacy. Maybe this is his like way of just like whining and dining me. Maybe he's just really, really romantic. Maybe he's just like the type of guy that wears his heart on his sleeve. We start chatting and he moves closer to me, and I'm just gonna cut to the chase. Over the course of the dinner, was he not only like extremely rude to the waiters, he would order them around like they were nothing, like they were literally his servants. And I could tell that I want to say servants. I could tell that the waiters were really, really nervous around him, and I could sense it because I used to be a waitress, and whenever really rude or mean customers used to come in, I would feel very uncomfortable around them. So I could sense it on the waiters that were serving us, and that automatically turned me off. And like, once I saw him being rude to waiters, it was like game over for me. But like, at that point I had already placed my order, and I was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna eat and then I'm gonna go. Yet another mistake. No food, no matter how delicious, was worth what I encountered that night. So we finally get our food, we're eating, and he was just an extremely uncomfortable person to be around because he kept putting his hands on me, he kept touching my shoulder, he kept putting his hand around my back, and I would playfully take his arm and be like, no, like, I didn't want to make it awkward. I was scared of his reaction. I don't know, I just was scared of this guy, guys. I don't understand why, because like, I'm a person that's not afraid of people, but I was genuinely afraid of him. Towards the end of my meal, he took his hand and he put it on the lower half of my left butt cheek, and he put his hand literally over my butt, and I had a dress on. He lifts the back of my dress up and he grabs the inside of my butt cheek. Like, literally his fingers were like inside my butt cheek, like literally inches from my vagina, and he grabbed it. And I don't know, like, maybe he thought that was funny, maybe he thought that was okay. I felt so dehumanized. I felt so disgusting. Shortly after that, I just told him I had to go home because I had Frank at home. Like, thank God Frank saves the day again. I'm sure all you pet owners know pets are the #1 excuse of getting out of a really bad day or a really bad situation. So he walks me outside of the restaurant, and I gave him like a half hug, and I get into a cab and I go home. And I got home, and my friend at the time was watching my dog, and she opens the door and she's like, how did it go? And I'm just like, awful. And I didn't even tell her the full story of what happened. I gave her like the rated PG version because I was so embarrassed and I was so ashamed of what had happened that night. And I literally, the first thing I did when she left was I got in the shower and I scrubbed my body because I felt so dirty and gross. I even texted one of my friends and I like confided in him because I wanted to tell somebody, but I just didn't feel comfortable telling my girlfriend because I don't know, I was just embarrassed that something like this could happen to me, that I could have such a serious lapse in judgment. So I planned to never talk to him again. I washed my body clean. Well, easier said said than done. The next morning, this guy has the audacity to text me and say, wow, not even a thank you for dinner, didn't take you as the type to ghost somebody. And this was like less than 24 hours after our date. So clearly this guy was just like really crazy. And I was still relatively frightened of him. And so I texted back saying thank you. And I explained to him that I was just not ready to date anybody at the moment and that the dinner was very delicious. And I just like kept it at that. And he messaged me back like kind of a passive aggressive remark, but after that I did not respond to him anymore. And he has texted me one other time since then, but I did not text back, and hopefully he just like thinks I changed my number or something. After that, I actually stopped dating for a while because I was just so scarred from that experience. It sickens me that there are men out there who think that they can treat women like this, like complete objects. And I'm sure there are women who treat men the same way as well, and I hate to say it, but just shitty people exist and there's really nothing you can do about it. But I think it definitely does help when people come together and share their stories with others, to let them know that they are not alone, and to also serve as a warning to others to try and be a better judge of character. And I know that sometimes it's difficult because sometimes people present themselves as such good and nice people, but they might turn out to be terrible. And so I hate to say it, sexual assault is not something that's just going to cease to exist. It's something that we will have to deal with as a society. I can't control the bad people in this world, but I can control how I let bad situations and bad people affect me. And I think that this experience has made me a stronger person, it has made me a smarter person, and it has made me a more compassionate person. This is not the only time that I have been sexually assaulted. The previous time was actually at a job that I was working. But you know, this just goes to show assault can happen anywhere. It could happen at work, it could happen when you're out with your friends, it can happen when you're out on a date. So just be safe, girls and guys, and hashtag me too. Thank you guys for listening to my story. Click the thumbs up button and make sure to subscribe to my channel by clicking it on my face, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.